Hello and welcome back to Armed with Speculation's General Issue, Tiberium Universal Lore. Today is an addendum to the last video, the environmental impact of Tiberium on the oceans. Today we will be talking about some comments that I've gotten from Andrey Radchenko and VideoCrowsNest in the comments. To start with, we're going to look at Andrey Radchenko's point that I was a little bit GDI-centric in this video. It was about the contamination of the world, which is more of a GDI thing to worry about, but definitely we should be talking about what Nod thinks about this. And for them, it's fully implemented divination. The turning of all the world's life into Tiberium-based beings, as Cain prophesized. Reading from his comment, "You've left out the third possible future, that being fully implemented divination. If the entirety of Earth's biosphere undergoes controlled restructuring into Tiberium-based life, be it through the use of a world-altering missile, like in the Nod ending of Tiberian Sun, or by any other means, then this new world could be even more suited for humanity than the old one ever was. Of course, this would open up new challenges, mainly avoiding overdependency, addiction, and endless resource hunger that eventually corrupted the ancient Skrin into the visitors after they had undergone a similar transformation." The comment under that, by VideoCrowsNest, reads, "Another problem with using the divination process via said missile would be that out of the survivors, not everyone or everything would make it. In addition, the birds and the bees need to be taken into account, which is to say, you need a certain amount of people to survive in order to repopulate, even if the leap was made from carbon-based life into Tiberium-based, or risk facing serious obstacles and the dangers that come with a genetic bottleneck. Consider that even if someone is successfully converted without dying, they might just end up losing their sapience, and thus becoming more akin to a humanoid hunter. This kind of mass divination would thus be among the last resort options due to how you only got one shot at it, and by massive deployment it means that any miscalculations or imperfections in the never before attempted move would mean extinction all the same. Not to mention that even if it does work, the challenges on the other side would be massive, down to having to relearn absolutely everything, as Tiberium-based life does not work on the same principles as carbon-based ones, and the same applies to materials. It would be thus a world reset missile." Andrey Radchenko returns with, "That's why I said fully implemented, as in every living thing is successfully transformed. Any other outcome would be an incomplete or partial transformation. We actually see that in limited form during Tiberium Wars 3 with the Tiberium infusion upgrade that doesn't kill its recipients or damage them in any way, provides complete immunity from Tiberium damage." VideoCrowsNest continues, "Even if the Tib infusion upgrade has some worrying points to think upon, as in, what are the long-term consequences of this? For all we know, a few years down the line, bad stuff might happen, because case in point to ask, why is the upgrade only given to the lowest tier Nod's infantry? The mass recruited squads of infantry have no real consequence to the Brotherhood beyond a mob of guns riled to rampage where they are appointed to do so. Certainly, if it makes folks more powerful, then give it to the Black Hand, Shadow Squads, the Commandos, or whatnot." Andrey also points out that it was also used on confessors, the Brotherhood's warrior priests. Now, for my thoughts on this, I look at this exchange and I think that is definitely true. If we're talking about the world as it is with a Tiberium-based existence, where all life has been transported or transmuted into Tiberium, we are definitely looking at a different world requirements for humans. Whether or not they'd be humans anymore. I suppose they'd be Homo sapien Tiberius? I don't know. If this ended up in a Tiberian Sun ending, where everything was perfectly transformed into Tiberium-laced life, we have to wonder how much of the human biology would remain the same. How much is going to continue over? Are we still needing water, large amounts? Because if we do, the Tiberium transforms into its new form, which eats water, gradually lowering the surface level of water on the planet, which could mean that we're probably going to die out. If it is true that the Forgotten only need Tib radiation to live, that means that we could eliminate basically all scarcity of the kinds of things that we need to survive, and use Tiberium for any materials that we might need in the future. While it's unlikely that large percentages of the population would survive the transmutation via a world-altering missile, there would likely be hundreds of millions of people left, allowing for genetic scarcity to be overcome in a fashion. Maybe. We have to wonder, though, because each mutation is unique, how likely it is that these Tiberium-based life will be able to breed with each other. Is each person its own unique species, or are they all mutating in the same way, noting that a person can either become a Tiberium mutant or they can become a Viceroid, allowing for some variability there. Another thing that we might have to worry about is that as a Tiberium-based life form, anything we touch could be transmuted into Tiberium, which means that any computer parts that we'd be working with, or metal that we'd be using for transportation or for building materials, would automatically be transmuted, and Tiberium in and of itself is not very useful. It's what it's broke down into that's very useful. So we might just survive infinitely on the planet with no material conditions to improve our lives, just existing on radiation. It's also unknown if what we're talking about when it comes to this divination is the same as what Cain is expecting. Are we going to transform a Tiberium-based life like Cain, where you're immortal and nearly omnipotent? Or will we become all like Omegon? Taking a look at this from the Tiberium Wars game with the Tiberium infusions, it's possible that instead of this being something that transforms us into something like the mutants, it could be that the Tiberium infusions work as sort of a super soldier serum instead of a total mutation, allowing us to be a hybrid between carbon and Tiberium-based life forms. Although VideoCrowsNest does point out something important here when they mention that the Tib infusion upgrade has some worrying points to think about. For instance, the upgrades are only given to the low-tier Nod units who are not expected to live very long, which means that the Black Hand, the Shadow Squads, and the Commandos are not given it, which means it's likely that this will kill the user in the long term, possibly giving them cancer or some form of Tiberium-based disease. Really, this is a big point of speculation that I think the community will have to really discuss, as I'm not entirely sure which direction I should be facing in this way. There's not a lot of direct lore here about what this would look like. We only have what Cain has speculated about to go off of. The second group of comments by VideoCrowsNest is also very interesting. He says, or she says, I don't really know. They say, to be fair, the level of Tiberium contamination by Tib's son should have by all logic already been enough to kill all life on the planet. Moving aside from that, though, they did strictly mention one of the clocks they're racing against in Firestorm was that the very atmosphere was months away from becoming toxic to carbon-based life. Only via some unmentioned information learned from the task list they managed to avert this fate. to the point that by Tib Wars, it's no longer an issue. Same goes for most waterways being cleaner. One could speculate that the information GDI got from the Tacitus might very well have also helped them decontaminate the oceans through some mysterious method. The very fact that they managed to reclaim a yellow zone into a blue zone later down the line does speak to how potent GDI's reclamation efforts really were. Without Tib War 3, which by all means was the nail that sealed the coffin for Earth, I am fairly sure, given enough time, GDI could have beaten the crystal back, provided it didn't evolve again. Considering how Tiberium evolution seems to cycle every few decades, odds are eventually that they would have slowed down or been rendered ineffective. Also, worth pointing out that without Tib War 3, GDI would have had much more time to mess around with the Tacitus, though they would still likely have managed to destabilize it and eventually lost access to it. Considering how much data GDI had from it though, in the millions of terabyte range, there was likely a lot left to look through in order to fight Tiberium. Not that it would have reverted any damage already done, meaning that if GDI beat back the Tiberium to stabilize Earth in the state it would have been left in, it would have been a massive project. Probably still easier than a task of settling on a new planet though. But with how things did turn out in the canon timeline, I don't see much chance of Earth being salvageable, unless you know, but we don't talk about that thing here, that imaginary fourth game. They raise a good series of points here, and first one I want to talk about is that the contamination of the atmosphere being overtaken by what knowledge they were able to glean from the Tacitus. This is sort of a deus ex machina, where a large problem is solved by snapping one's finger. God did it. We are able to overcome it. And the Tacitus largely serves this function, which, fair enough, because it produced things like Cabal, so it is pretty much, that is fair. But it's not very satisfying. But if there was a method to clean the atmosphere, then there must be a method to clean the oceans. Because we see that the Tiberium algae is gone by the Third War, or is mostly gone, or percentages of it are gone, there must have been some way to clean the surface of the water. That, or the algae was not part of the next evolution. They were able to reclaim a yellow zone, which is incredibly impressive, yes, but it doesn't stop the problem of the massive amount of biodiversity that has been lost, taking its toll on the environment. For instance, if we reclaim a yellow zone that is on the west coast, where all of that biodiversity has been destroyed, then we need to take things on the east coast to repopulate that area with plants and animals, which means that many places will take decades, if not centuries, to rewild and recover. Then again, it is very possible that a lot of the information on the Tacitus is organic non-Tiberium life, so we might be able to see greenery from other planets replace some of that stuff. That might be interesting. GDI did get millions of terabytes of information, which is not likely to all just be about Tiberium. It could be that much of that information is about the Scrin and many other topics. We just haven't quite gone all the way through the data yet. So it is possible that with all of that data, and given a long enough time, scientists could come up with a way to reverse everything and bring the Earth back to the way it was before. I don't find it very likely. I would have to agree with VideoCrowsNest here that by the end of Tiberium Wars, the Earth is pretty much toast, but it is possible that large amounts of it could be recovered if GDI wins, or some sort of compact is made with Nod to allow them to make an exodus and use some of their Tiberium expertise to salvage the world. But for now, I'm not entirely sure that there is a future, even with all the information provided by these two incredible commenters. Well, this has been roughly a double the length feature for a follow-up, which is pretty funny. I think I'll do this more in the future with comments as I get them, making more of these follow-up features. This was fun to do and fun to speculate with, so I hope more people comment and we can get more of these discussions going. I think that'd be pretty cool. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week, and see you in the next video.